Meeple Nation Podcast, episode 524. Games that we've pulled off our shelf of shame.
Welcome, citizens, to Meeple Nation. Grab your favorite beverage, pull up a chair, warm up those dice, and join us at the game table as we discuss board games and the board gaming world. Each week, the hosts of Meeple Nation share their love for board games and the amazing memories that come from playing games with some very outstanding people. Let us now join our hosts in their natural habitat, the game table.
Finally, there's still so many there though. It's like the little girl and her finger in the dike, you know. It's just you feel like you pull one game off and there's just more games there. Maybe that's a bad analogy because she's stopping the water from coming through, but yeah, maybe I'm just putting more holes that the little girl needs to block. But
yeah, well, it reminds me of those they have those at the grocery store. They have those little auto loading things. So if you pull out the product that's at the front, then it sort of spring loads the next one to the front. Yeah, it's like that. I pull one off and it's like, okay, next up, and it's how many's behind there? I'm looking, and there's no end to that shelf.
Feels like it for sure.
Yeah, they keep coming.
The Meeple Nation podcast is sponsored by GameToppersLLC.com. They have a great website full of amazing product. You should wander on over there, peruse their gallery of goods, and find something to add to your shopping cart. That's GameToppersLLC.com.
Fantastic. Well, we are the hosts of Meeple Nation. I am Douglas Stewart.
And I am Nathan Howard. Doug, it's just you and I tonight.
It is. We're down in Andy. We were hoping he may join a little bit later. He was dealing with work and other responsibilities, and he's racing over as quickly as possible. So maybe you'll hear from him partway through this episode.
Hopefully.
It's in the cards.
Yeah.
Not a guarantee, but it is in the cards. Well, we are the hosts of Meeple Nation, and we have a cool website, meeplenation.com. Head on over there to check out a whole bunch of really cool stuff. Blogs, photos, socials, all that good stuff. There's also a link to our Patreon account. If you want to consider becoming a patron of the podcast, you can go check that out. And as always, we would love to hear from you, so please feel free to email us at meeplenation@gmail.com.
All right, Doug. You and I, we game together quite a bit.
We do.
So some of our highlights overlap.
It's been known to happen.
It has been known to happen. But what have you been playing lately that has stuck out as a shining moment at the Doug Stewart game table?
I have a couple of them, and I hate it when this happens. But I have two that I want to point out here. So in recent years, more so like this year and last year, there's been a big push, at least on my part, to not double back games. So if it's a game we're all interested in and it hits Kickstarter or GameFound or one of those other, crowdfunding sites, we try to put our heads together and go, okay, who's going to back this? Or it's like, well, did anybody already back this? And, sometimes there's a game that's just like, we're all going to back it.
Yeah, like the Earth expansion.
Sure. Yeah, that just dropped. Actually, we're recording on Earth Day today, and that just dropped, and I backed it earlier today. I didn't even bother to ask because I knew I wanted it on my shelf.
Yeah,
so that definitely happens. But there's these other games where we go, okay, if somebody else is going to get it, I don't necessarily need to own it. And especially if multiple people are going to get it. So there was a game called Skyrise that hit crowdfunding, and I knew that you were going to get it. And at the time, actually, Dave was really talking about getting it. Now, I should have known better because Dave never buys games. But at the time, he was really talking it up like it was one he was going to get. And I was like, well, we don't need a second or third copy. And so I passed. Well, that just fulfilled not too long ago. It's been sitting over on your table for, 2 or 3 weeks, maybe?
2 or 3 weeks, yeah.
So I made a comment about it one night when I was leaving for game night. And so you grabbed the rule book and brushed up on it. And we took it over to my house after we kind of had like an activity where we actually taught a bunch of people from the community some games. And that was actually a lot of fun. Kind of a little nice. Meeple Nation outreach kind of thing that we did. And then we went over to my house and we played Skyrise. And I'm rethinking my philosophy on not backing games that look great because it was amazing and I want it on my shelf. Skyrise was so good.
It was an excellent game. It's surprisingly easy to learn and play.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mechanics, it kind of reminded me a little bit of Foundations of Rome.
Yeah, that's the comparison I was going to make too.
Because there's a similar kind of not quite as grand of a table presence as Foundation of Rome, but it still has a very nice table presence.
Not as, but it's still really good.
Yeah, and the buildings look really nice, and the platform the floating platform that you're building all your buildings on looks really nice. And is it necessary? Absolutely not. But like you were mentioning when we were playing, is you could totally have omitted this part, but it sure makes the game pop.
Yeah, it really does. And, they could have done this in a much simpler way. They could have really dumbed down the production value on this game. I'm so glad that they didn't, because it's really awesome. But basically, you have kind of a board you're going to put out, and then you have these really cool, like 3D. They've kind of got like all the gears and mechanisms and gizmos that might be holding like a city afloat on these kind of islands, right? And based on the number of players, you're going to put those out on the board. And each one of those islands is divided up into districts, like little neighborhoods. Yeah. There's some lakes and different things like that. So what you do is you lay the board out, and then you seed all of those neighborhoods with like a little bonus of some sort. And then the core of the game is you play in 2 eras, and over the era 1, everybody takes their buildings, and the buildings are these really cool plastic, sculpted pieces, but you start with them upside down, because on the bottom, they all have a number.
Right.
And so you use those numbers, and essentially you're laying them out. And I'm not going to go into a rules teach here, but it's kind of a fun auction/bidding sort of mechanic.
I mean, it is an auction mechanic.
Yeah.
But I get where you're saying the sort of, because it doesn't really feel like.
Well, because you are auctioning, or you're want to get your
placement.
Exactly. But you're putting your building in a place that's adjacent to the one that just got put. So you're not necessarily bidding on like one spot. Like in Foundations of Rome, you're trying to buy up those plots.
Right.
In this one, it's like, well, do I want something next to what just got placed? Okay, then I need to place a higher valued building in one of those spots. And then if the next person wants to outbid you, they can go to the next spot and put a higher building. And there's rules on how all that works out. But it was really slick, really crunchy, really thinky, and a lot of fun. You could kind of create like these little like areas on the islands where if you won the bid, then it set you up to use your smaller buildings to just automatically claim certain areas. So if you could kind of almost like a game of checkers or chess, where you could kind of set yourself up for some of those. Right. That was really enjoyable and fun. The production value was really, really good. And ultimately you're just collecting these bonuses, which builds your kind of scoring synergies. So you're kind of trying to create these basically scoring combos so that all your buildings and stuff are worth more points at the end of the game. Right. But I loved it. I thought it was super great, and I wish that I owned it, but I'm going to be content. I'm going to be content in you having it, and we just need to play it more, because I really liked it a lot.
For sure. And it is one that as soon as we were starting to play it, it was one that several times I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be a great game. Glad I got this one. It's one that I'm planning to teach at SaltCon awesome. In summer. Yeah. And if maybe even do it twice, because it's something that I'm pretty sure people will want to play.
Yes, I think so.
And depending on time, I mean, maybe I'll just do one scheduled event and then have it to play again, because it is such a great game.
Yeah, it really is. So that was Skyrise. Now I'm going to piggyback on another highlight, just because it's adjacent to what we're talking about here. And the exact same thing happened with Let's Go to Japan.
Yeah. Well, this is one that you said you were excited about and looked at it, and I was like, oh, hey, that does look good. I think I'll back it too. Yeah. I mean, but I don't back Kickstarters.
I love Japan. I mean, I lived there for a couple of years. I absolutely love Japan. I love Japanese things, the culture, history, food, you name it. And when this game came out, I was like, this looks so good. But you had backed it, and actually our friend Mike had also backed it. And I was just going, I don't need another copy. We don't need 3 copies in the group. We'll have plenty of opportunity to play it. And that's true. We will have plenty of opportunity to play it. It'll be okay. But this was another one that after we played it the first time, I was like, man, I don't know. I kind of wish that I had backed this. It was also really, really fun.
Yeah. Had a similar feel for like when you busted out Raising Robots, or when even Nathan Tinney busted out Raising Robots, which is a Kickstarter. I was like, I'm okay to pass on that. And then I played it. I'm like, oh, this scratches more of an itch than I thought.
Gotta go on the shelf. But see, I'm not going to go get Let's Go to Japan. You've already picked up Racing Robots.
Yes.
So that's the difference between the two of us.
Yes. I have issues. You have issues, but less issues.
Okay. I'll accept that if that's my lot. But Let's Go to Japan. Also a really, really great game. Basically, you have kind of you Monday through Saturday, and it's card drafting. So it's like you're drafting cards and passing them, and you are trying to create the most not valuable, but a trip to Japan that will score you the most points, create the most happiness and the most memories.
So that's what you're doing. You're planning your itinerary.
Yeah.
And so you're laying out all these cards. You're going to go either to Tokyo or to Kyoto. And as you're placing these cards down in your agenda, and you can have up to 3 cards in a day, but you have to plan. If you go from Tokyo to Kyoto, you're going to have to take a train. And if you're taking the train too often, all of a sudden you have to pay for all those train tickets, and you're wasting all your time on your trip riding on the train. And so that affects your happiness, your experience, your positive experience.
Now, the game does a good job of allowing you, if you set yourself up right, you can turn that into points.
Yes.
Right? You can get the luxury trains and actually turn that into a happy thing and gain points. So I feel like they've really thought through the mechanisms of the game, the way you move up and down the happiness or the stress tracks based on the activity level of the things you do during days,
the cost of
or the amount of money that it costs to go do those things. So I really enjoyed Let's Go to Japan. I definitely want to play it again. There's things I would do different. It's one of those where it took me kind of one playthrough to really grok, like, oh, okay, like this is more valuable than this. I need to set this up rather than this. There were also a couple things like with the wild tokens that I didn't realize they worked the way they did, and I would have got some points that way. So it did take me one play to kind of grok the game and figure out what it does. But I really like that one too. So 2 excellent Kickstarters that fulfilled recently that we got to the table that I absolutely loved.
Yeah. And the great thing about this was we have a newcomer, another Dave, that has joined our group, who's actually a neighbor of mine. And
yes,
I was out, we were doing some yard work, and I went to ask him if he needed any help. And I was wearing my Meeple Nation t-shirt, which can be found at Amazon.com. And I was also wearing a jacket that was a SaltCon jacket. And so he looks at my SaltCon jacket and he's like, "Oh, you're a board gamer?" And so I open up my jacket to look at my Meeple Nation shirt, and I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, I saw your SaltCon." I was like, "Well, look at these giant meeples." And it was the SaltCon logo that got you. But no, we had a great conversation, and somebody lives right across the street from me was way excited to, and he was all bragging about how many games he's got. "I got these 2 shelves just full of games." I'm like, "Yeah, I have a couple of games too."
Yeah.
And then last week when he was here, he's like, "Can I take some pictures?"
I take a picture because my wife won't believe me.
And so it was great to have him, but he was player number 5. So when I was teaching this game, and because Mike was here, he had his copy. Both of us had pretty much read the rules, but neither of us had played it. So we were going to okay, well, let's just wing this. So we started to explain it, and then somebody else showed up, and then Doug showed up. And
I think you taught the game 3 times.
Yeah, we taught it like 3 times. So by the time we got to the finish, the 3rd time, we had most of our bugs worked out until we ran into some hiccups throughout the gameplay. But it was nice because I gave up my seat to allow Dave to play. And as I was teaching, going through it, I actually really felt like I had played the game, even though I hadn't. So I'm still excited to get my first play of this game.
Yeah.
But I still have, I felt like I had a kind of a symbiotic relationship with David as we were playing through his turns together, because I was trying to explain everything and make sure he
trying to help him. Yeah, as he was taking his turns. Yeah, that was good.
And so it was a great experience. He really enjoyed it, and he had a good time. So, and I had a good time teaching the game. Probably one of the most fun experiences I had teaching a game.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a little bit older. And so, but when he came over last week, he was like, "Well, I'm sorry I'm a little bit late. I was playing Fortnite with my grandson." Yeah. And I was just like, "Oh man, best grandpa ever." Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a retired military. He was a paratrooper. And he had a couple opportunities. I guess one opportunity where his chute didn't open. And so he suffered more than one concussion, has some kind of some brain trauma. So he had to warn us beforehand that there's a good chance you can explain something and you're going to have to explain it again. And it's like, we've played with other Dave before, so you're going to fit right in.
Fit right in.
Yeah.
No worries.
But yeah, he's come a couple of times now, and he's super excited that he found somebody to play games with right across the street. So. Yeah. Let that be a lesson to you that get to know your neighbors, because you might find some awesome neighbors out there.
For sure. Learn who lives next door, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think our highlights are pretty much together highlights. So let's just call that our highlights. How about that?
Well, okay. So I do want to talk about one more, only briefly, and only because I don't know where else I would talk about it.
Okay.
And I'm going to just toss this out there because this was another one that you and I played together. This is Ottawa.
So this one is off of my shelf of shame.
It is. So we might talk about it maybe a little bit more in depth, but I want to throw it in. I want to throw it in here just because this game fell into a category of game that I realized that there's these games out there that are technically really interesting that work on a level. I mean, this is an Uwe Rosenberg game.
Yeah.
He's a great designer. Some of my favorite games are Uwe Rosenberg games. This game flowed. Richie taught it to us. It was, so the teach was really good. I don't think there were really any rules questions or anything like that. We all knew what we were doing. We were sitting down kind of, you could, smell the smoke coming off our brains because we, it was a little brain burning as we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. But it was one of those where we got done with the game and I was like, well, that was something, wasn't it?
Yeah. Went through the motions, did all that.
Because I just don't know how fun it was.
Yeah.
I don't know that there was any real fun factor. And I'm realizing more and more that sometimes these games, even though they work, they're not, there are some that just aren't fun. They kind of lack that fun factor. And it fell into that category for me. And I think you had kind of expressed similar thoughts when we got done playing it. And so I just wanted to throw it out here because other than talking about it when we talk about our Shelf of Shame games, I don't know that it would ever make like a highlight or anything like that. But we did play it, and I thought it was just worth throwing out there.
Yeah, and I didn't hate it by any means.
No, not at all.
I did enjoy my experience, but exactly like you're saying, after playing Skyrise, I was very excited about that game.
Yep.
After not even playing Let's Go to Japan, I was very excited about that experience. After playing Ottawa, and I think I took second place, I didn't have a memorable experience with it.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And it's not one that I'm like anxiously going to pull off my shelf again.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, it might end up in the coal pile, not because it's a bad game, but just because the excitement and the thrill of the game night, it just didn't hit.
Yeah, it just wasn't there. I think Richie felt similar. He liked it better than you and I did, but I think he felt kind of similar about it.
Yeah, and he loves his deep strategy games and a lot of thought going into your turns and planning. He taught me Feasts of Odin. There was a game night that was just he and I, and it was a perfect storm to teach Feast of Odin. And so he brought that over, and it was great. I learned Feast of Odin, played it, had a very enjoyable time. Also an Uwe Rosenberg game, and one of my favorite games of all time. Yeah, and I very much enjoyed that experience. Then I started to play a game with you online because BGA has a great implementation of it. And I totally don't remember what I'm doing.
Yeah, that happens all the time with those online games.
So I'm like, so I don't own this game. But it is one that I want to play again in person. Yeah. I'm still struggling through our online game, and I'm pretty sure I will be devastated in this. And I won the first one. I can't remember if I mentioned that. I won the one with Richie, and I think that was just a fluke. But
I don't know.
So, but we'll see how this game goes. It's just we're in the early turns. We're like
round 2 or starting round 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yep.
And so I'm excited about the game. I like the game, but there's some stuff that is stuck on my the speed bumps in my brain. Yeah. So, but
a game like that to me just brings the thrill of the play. And every turn I take, I'm like, oh, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this work? How am I going to maximize? It's just so fun to figure out those turns. And with Ottawa, it was like, this works and it's technically good, but it's just wasn't necessarily fun. Yeah. So anyway,
that was putting the puzzle pieces together, but it just, it was like you're putting the puzzle pieces together upside down. It just didn't have that excitement of completing the puzzle. It was just like, all right.
That was that. Good times, maybe?
Question mark? Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, that will, I think, wrap up our highlights conversation. So let's jump in to the topic of the week, which is our Shelf of Shame games that we are finally getting around to playing. And our hope is that this will be a more regular thing that we discuss. So we'll do these. I don't know. We've thrown out quarterly. If you have any feedback for us on that, drop us a line at meeplenation@gmail.com. We're trying to determine how often we want to do these episodes, but we want to try to be a little more accountable with the games that we get played off of our shelf of shame. So, this is our first go. We've actually managed to get quite a few off the shelf. We're focused a little more on that this year, and we have some games we want to talk about.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ottawa was for sure one that I'd got off my shelf. And we kind of put some stipulations. Well, Doug, you kind of put some stipulations.
For me, yeah.
And I thought they were sound stipulations. So I'm like, I will follow these guidelines that you're setting up for you. I thought those sound great to apply to me. So these were games that I had to own before 2024.
Okay. Yep.
And they were games that, not games that I had played before and just had dust on them. These were games that were on the shelf of shame, meaning they had not been played. I had owned them for some time. And I think the newest one on my list was Sky Team. I had Sky Team for, I think I had Sky, well, since it first came out. So that's probably 6 months.
Okay. Yep.
So that's the most recent game that was on my list. And that was one that I fairly recently taught you and played with my wife, and my wife didn't like it.
Oh, yeah.
And I was really kind of bummed out.
Yeah,
she
that
had
is
kind of
too
a
bad.
bad experience. I hope that we can get it to the table again, because I think it's a really good game. And if Doug, if you're not playing with me, I think it's a game that you can win. Because we played our game the other day, and all I had to do was just make sure that
if you had spent 2 of our coffee tokens, we would have won, but you forgot to, and so we crashed.
we crashed and burned
on the very last dice. That's all good. It's no worries at all. But fun game, really, really good. But yeah, like you said, because I think you just taught me that one. It was about a month ago, and you had it clear back from when it first came out.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a good one. So the rules that I had kind of set up, and you've mentioned them briefly, but for me, it was, they can't be games that have been brought back. So recent examples, I'd recently just gotten Amigi out and Seven Wonders, but I played those when they first came out years ago. Mm-hmm. So they're not shelf of shame games. I've played them. Right. And then it can't be something brand new. And in my opinion, it can't be something that's just like, it's still new enough. It's like, if it's been sitting on the shelf, but it's only been there for like a few months, like, I like, for example, Destiny's Witchwood and Marine Worlds for Ark Nova. I recently played those. They'd been on the shelf for maybe 2 to 3 months. I'm not ashamed of those games. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
And so no worries on those at all whatsoever. I also, the one thing you didn't mention is they can't be, in my opinion, they can't be somebody else's shelf of shame games.
Oh yeah.
So I'm not counting. So you've got a bunch of shelf. I mean, we joke around about it all the time, but you've got plenty of shelf of shame games in the game room here. And the ones that we play that you get off the shelf and that we get played, I'm not counting those as my shelf of shame games played.
Yeah. No, I think I'm not counting any of those as well.
So you had mentioned Ottawa and Sky Team.
Yes.
One of them that I got played at the last SaltCon was Trekking Through History. So this is one that I purchased some time ago, and it was just there in shrink on the shelf for a long time. And it was actually my daughter who was like, "Oh, I didn't know we had this one." And so she, opened it up and punched it and read the rules and taught it to us at SaltCon. But that one had been sitting on the shelf for like 7 to 8 months. Now that was a game that I didn't really care for.
Neither did Cheryl. That was one that afterwards, when we're walking away, she's like, "You don't need to buy that one."
Yeah. I think Amberly liked it okay. It does something for her. She's like really, really logical driven and trying to like line stuff up in sequence and that kind of thing. Like that, it has some of those mechanisms to it that made it, I think, fun for her. So I'll keep it and send it off with her when she leaves for college or whatever. I'll give it to her probably. But yeah, it's not one that's gonna stick around for me. But I got it played. So Trekking Through History, that was one of my games. So
another one that I'd had for some time is Terraforming Mars, the dice game. So that it's been 6, 7, 8 months, I think, since that fulfilled. And Andy really gripes about the whole Terraforming Mars experience. And I kind of have some Terraforming Mars fatigue as well. I don't hate Terraforming Mars. Right. I didn't have the experience that Andy had, but I've had some similar experiences where I totally understand Andy's bad feelings towards it. But my daughter loves Terraforming Mars. Ashley thinks Terraforming Mars is the greatest game out there, and she would love to play with experienced players, and she feels that she has played it enough on her app that she could hold her own in a match with them. But Terraforming Mars, the dice game, we got to get to the table, and this is a very palatable, bite-sized version of Terraforming Mars that is even Andy has picked up.
Yeah. He went and bought it. So if that says, I mean, the guy in the group that likes Terraforming Mars the least went and picked it up. So if that doesn't say something, I don't know what does.
Yeah. And so it was a good game. I loved that it was very simple and you're still doing the resource management. It still has the feel of Terraforming Mars. I get 100%.
Definitely. Yep.
And I don't feel like it does the theme a disservice at all. I thought it was great. I very much enjoyed my play. And this is one I'm very anxious to get my wife to play as well.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see whether she likes it. I mean, this is an incredibly palatable version of Terraforming Mars. Of the versions of Terraforming Mars that I played, this is by far the simplest.
Yes, absolutely.
But it was still satisfying and fun and gave you some good choices. Now, there's a lot of dice mitigation built in, but it is still rolling dice, and they really do hate me. I know we joke around it. They really do hate me, and I had a hard time getting all the icons that I needed, and so I had to invest really heavily in mitigation.
Yeah.
Which ultimately gave me what I wanted, but because I was spending so much effort mitigating dice, that I fell behind the curve with everyone else as far as score and stuff goes. But I would love to play it again sometime. I did think that it was a solid version of Terraforming Mars.
Yeah, I thought it was great. I look forward to playing it again for sure.
Yep. Speaking of Terraforming Mars, that segues us right into one that I got off my shelf of shame, which was the Discoveries and Foundations expansions for Ares Expedition. So that fulfilled, and I'd had that sitting on my shelf for a long time. We played that also at SaltCon. Absolutely loved it. Actually, both of those games add some things to Ares Expedition that I think are brilliant and worked really well. Ares Expedition is my favorite version of Terraforming Mars, and this added some things to it that I really, really liked. So that version has only gotten better for me. So I'm super glad that we got that off the shelf and got that played.
Excellent. And my wife tried to play that one, and then I had the panel that I was a part of at SaltCon, and so she wanted to make sure she was at that, and she didn't feel bad walking away from that game.
Yeah, I kind of got that impression.
Yeah.
The thing is I actually think she would really enjoy it.
I think so too.
But we were kind of rushed, and we ended up having to switch tables to accommodate the player count and everything. And so it was a little bit of a mad jumble, and I started teaching it, and then I had to restart from the beginning because players had switched and stuff. And I think it was the whole thing was a little overwhelming, like kind of too much work for what she was getting out of it.
Right.
And so I think she was happy to be able to walk away.
Yeah. She didn't feel bad at all. She's like, I want to learn how to play that one again, but maybe at a different time.
Yeah. When there's no time constraint and you can just take it slow, I bet she would really like it.
Yeah. So in preparation for, I can't even remember what the mechanic was, I busted out 5 Seals of Magic, which is one that I culled.
Mm-hmm. I remember you talking about this.
Yeah.
I didn't get to play this one with you, but I remember your complaints about the rule book.
Yeah. The rule book was really bad. And oddly, the artwork on the board was confusing because you had ways that passageways were supposed to be blocked, but the way the art laid out on the board made it appear that you could still go around those positions. And we finally, after evaluating, going back because the rules didn't clarify one way or the other, that we just, looks like it should be blocked, even though looks like you can go through. So we're kind of making those judgment calls. Couldn't find anything to validate one way or the other. And just when a game's confusing like that, it's just...
Yeah, I hate that. Yeah, and it's like, why didn't this get play tested? Like who play tested it, and why didn't they say, hey, this art's a little confusing with what you've got going on? Or, hey, how come you're calling cards tiles all of a sudden?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. Yeah, they had everything card, and then on page 3 they started referring to them as tiles. And so I'm going back to the inventory page and I was like, okay, I mean, these are
these
thick
tiles?
cardboard, but you've been calling them cards. On the inventory, they're listed as cards, but now 2 pages later, you're calling them tiles. Yeah, well, bad rules. Bad rules.
Yeah, bad rules, confusing art. That'll do it. But you got it off the shelf, got it played, and now it's gone.
Now it's gone. Yes.
It can make room for a new one.
Yeah.
Well, one that we both got to play that had been sitting on my shelf for almost a year, and that was Azul Queen's Garden.
And this was one that was on my list as well.
Yeah.
And it was actually one that my wife had seen in the basement. It was on our table downstairs to play together. And this is one that she even threatened to read the rules for herself, which I was way excited that those words even came out of her mouth. She didn't end up reading them, and she didn't get the opportunity to play this with us. But I have this down enough that I can teach it to her.
Yeah. And I bet she would like it. I think this is definitely the most thinky version of Azul.
Absolutely.
In my opinion. The drafting and the way you have to stage your stuff before you get it out on your board, the way that everything combos off of each other. I think this one has more to think about than any of the other Azul games that came before it. But my daughter was the one that taught this to us. She did a great job. This was another SaltCon game and one that I can't wait to get off the shelf again. I don't know if it's my new favorite version of Azul, because I really do like Summer Pavilion. Actually, I like the one before that too. The stained glass one.
The stained glass Sintra,
I think. Yeah.
Stained glass.
I like those a lot. I don't know. One of these days we need to just do like an Azul marathon and play them and just see which one we like the best.
Yeah, I like that.
So I don't know where it ranks, but it's up there. Like I enjoyed Queen's Garden quite a lot.
Yeah. I think it's just because it was more beefy.
Yeah.
And it definitely provided still the simple mechanics, but there was so much to think about, so much to analyze, that it really did feel like it was a heavier game and a beefier game.
Yeah. Yeah. Super fun though.
So Richie, seems like Richie's been teaching us a lot of our games off the shelf of shame.
I love it.
I do too.
It's fantastic.
Richie has been in buy all these roll and writes because this is a mechanic that he can get his wife to play. And we've talked about this recently, but Rolling Realms was one that I had pretty much when it came out during the pandemic that I picked up because I was like, okay, this is something that we can play, and then
just got lost.
Just got forgotten.
Yep.
And so then when he had it and he taught it, I was like, oh, great. It's great. We can get this game out and play it. I wasn't as enthralled with it as Andy was. Andy went out and bought it right off.
Yeah, this one really seemed to click with Andy. Richie and Amberly and me played this together, so it was just the three of us, and it didn't really land with Amberly or I very much. I mean, it is okay.
It fell in the okay for me.
It's not bad at all, and certainly if it was the game that everyone wanted to play, I'd play it again. This hasn't made some sort of blacklist or anything like that, but it's very much a middle of the line roll and write game for me.
Yeah, and it's one that I think will make my coal pile in SaltCon Summer.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Not because it's a bad game.
Yeah.
It's not like Five Seals of Magic, but it's more like Ottawa. It's just a game that was okay.
Like it works, but the fun just isn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
I wonder actually if Richie or Andy would be interested in picking that up from you, because
I'm sure they probably are.
Richie, I think, liked it, but also Andy had talked about combining copies so we could play more players and that kind of thing. So they might want to keep it, as part of their collection so that we can play it at higher player count or something like that. But it'd be worth checking with them. I've talked about this, I don't know, it was a couple months ago. I talked about it heavily, like on a number of the episodes that we did, but we recently made our way through the Leisure and Decadence campaign for It's a Wonderful World. And that was also a Shelf of Shame game. So that expansion had been sitting on my shelf for over a year by the time we finally had gotten around to it. So I was really thrilled to get that played, especially since it added so much that is now a permanent part of the core. Like if we just pull out It's a Wonderful World to play sometime, a lot of those things are now just integrated into that game in a really fun and great way. I mean, the stuff that it adds, I wouldn't want to play without.
Yep.
And so I'm super excited we got through that. Fantastic experience. So glad we got it off the Shelf of Shame and got it played. My daughter and I and my son, Brigham. So it was Amberly, Brigham, and myself. We got that one played and just really had a great time. The War and Peace campaign is okay. It's just okay. This Leisure and Decadence campaign, though, if you like It's a Wonderful World, that's the one to go play. It's awesome.
And that's the one that adds the culture, the pink cubes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. And workers and all that stuff.
Yep. That's good times. So another one that Amberly taught us at SaltCon was a game that I had for a long time, but I think was a recent acquisition for you. And I had taken it to SaltCon to get a chance to try to play it there. And then Amberly busted out and says, "Hey, do you want to play this?" And I was like, "Is that my copy?" And she was like, "No." And then I'm like, "Okay, let's play it then," because I was really anxious to play it. And that was Sea Salt and Paper.
Yeah, love this game.
And the simplicity of the game and the complexity of the artwork that is in. I mean, you look at all these origamis of fish, sea life, boats, mermaids. They're all pictures of somebody's origami foldings.
Yeah.
Origami work that they've put together and done a phenomenal job.
Yeah, it's really good.
And the mechanics are very simple. You have 2 discard piles and a draw pile. You're either going to draw one of the 2 cards from the discard pile or draw 2 cards from the draw pile and discard one of them. And then as soon as you have 7 points, whether those points are played out in front of you or in your hand, then you can, if you want, try to trigger the end game and you call once more or
last chance
or stop.
You can call it. You just say stop or you can say last chance. Everyone tallies up points. But yeah, it's played in those rounds, right? So you have these bursty rounds of like somewhere usually between 7 to, well, everyone gets to score, but based on how well they did, they score, fewer or more points. So, you have these rounds made out of anywhere between like 5 and maybe 12 or 13 points typically.
Right.
They kind of fall in that range for everybody. And then it's the first to score 30 or 40 points, something like that, depending on the player count.
Yeah.
Really, really good. And that extra salt little blister pack that comes with it adds some super cool stuff. Although we were just talking about this before we recorded, they did commit the egregious sin of not having that blister pack be produced by, I don't know what happened, but it wasn't produced the same way that the original box was.
Cards are a little bit different.
Yeah, the cards are a little different size. And actually there's some copies of this have a little bit more of that cardboard feel, like the almost like cardstock feel to the core game. And some of them have the high gloss versions. Yeah. And so I've actually read online people having like if they have the core game and then they have the high gloss little blister pack and they don't go well. So you have to sleeve them, but they don't fit well sleeved into the box.
Yeah.
So there's some component issues with that one, but it's still a really fun game. But interesting though, that you had it on your shelf. So you counted as a shelf of shame game.
Yes.
But you played it, but it was my copy and I wasn't there. And it was Amberly who taught you.
Yes.
But you got it played.
But I got it played. And I've played my copy several times since.
Oh, yeah. We've been playing it a ton since. I played it with my brother and sister-in-law just a few weeks back, and they loved it. They're not really gamers, but they were like, oh, we need to get that. That's a really fun little card game. So
very easy to teach, accessible for most any player. Very well done. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really good one. Okay, so the one that I got off my shelf that's also a little card game that was on my shelf of shame for the longest of all of them that I'm talking about today was a little card game by Reiner Knizia called High Society. And I did talk about this one a little while back. A really simple little bidding game. Every player is given a handful of cards that has money on it. And then there's a central deck of these cards that represent points that are basically, it's like your social status or whatever.
Right.
And you bid on those cards. But there's also some cards that are negative, but they still have to be bid on. And basically it's the first person to pass who has to take those cards in the bidding process. So you're either going to spend a lot of money avoiding those, or you're just going to take them. And basically it's whoever can get the most points at the end. But whoever has the least amount of money left over in their hand at the end of the game is automatically out for scoring.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So there's a real balance. You're watching what everybody else is spending on all these cards and like you're constantly like adding them up in your head. Like, okay, wait, they've got this. I know they spent a lot on that. Okay. They didn't spend very much on this. I've got to watch it. Okay. I can spend a lot here, but I better not on this, that kind of thing. And so it's kind of a fun little drafting or a bidding game. I didn't care for it a lot. My daughter hated it. Lydia loved it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she loved it. We played it twice and she won both games. She absolutely loved it. Amberly hated it, and I was kind of middle of the line. So we had sort of a Goldilocks and the Three Bears kind of
awesome.
experience with it. But anyway.
So speaking of your wife, Lydia, we had the opportunity to play my version of a game that you've played several times, but one that I had on the shelf for a while now, and that was Rear Window.
Oh, yeah.
And Rear Window is kind of in the vein of that Mysterium, where you have one person who is has more information than the others and are trying to get the other players to guess what they're doing. Or in the case of Rear Window, they could be a murderer and they're trying to get away with the murder. It follows the Hitchcock movie fairly well, where you're looking through all these windows and you're trying to, the active person, one of the clue giver they're trying to give information. And if there is a murderer, then they're trying to distract a little bit, but give you enough of breadcrumb information that you feel like you're getting to the right destination without giving a red herring that they think is way off, that they just throw out the game. I really enjoyed this game. I thought it scratches that itch similar to Mysterium, but I found it a little bit more accessible, something that I look forward to playing with my wife, and to take to maybe some of those opportunities where you're playing with less gamery gamers and being able to teach a game with simple mechanics and a simple theme. But yet underneath there have some complexity that maybe sometimes people don't realize they're playing a bigger game than they are.
Yeah, for sure. And I will just say also, if you love that Alfred Hitchcock movie, Rear Window, which is based off of, I feel like this is a really well done tribute to that. It feels very much like that. I mean, not that they've used a lot of those assets from the movie, because they haven't. Like, it's stylized art. Right. It's not like they've pulled still images or anything from the movie, but you definitely get that vibe. It's a kind of a nice tribute to what the movie was. With one person taking on that role as the director, Alfred Hitchcock, and everybody else taking on
the director.
Yeah. And then everybody else is those characters, that are trying to solve the mystery or whatever. But it's really good. And if you like those types of games, like Mysterium or Obscurio or that kind of thing, if that is your jam, and you want a simpler version of that, something that's easy. You were kind of mentioning the rule set's a little lighter or whatever, but like something that's a little easier to teach and that people can, without knowing that they're playing a little bit more of a hobby game, because you can teach it fairly quick. It does a great job at meeting that need.
Yeah.
Okay. I have one more on my list that I was able to get to that I wanted to talk about. And that was one that I sat down with Brigham and played about a week ago. And that was Ascension Tactics.
Oh yeah. You were talking about that when we were playing Skyrise.
Yeah.
How much you like that.
Yep. And it sat on the shelf. I like Ascension. I like deck building games and I like Ascension. I think it's good. And so I had picked this one up. I didn't back it when it came out. This was crowdfunded. Uh-huh. And so I didn't back it then. So this is just the retail version. So I don't have any of the minis or any of the fun stuff or anything like that. And the retail version is pretty simple. I mean, the little pieces that mark your units out on the board, they're basically like a little square cardboard piece that has some art on it that you put in a standee. So it's very simple, super simple production of this game. It's all cardboard and plastic. When there is a more deluxe version that exists out there that I may have to track down if we continue to play this and like it as much as we did. But I really loved it. It was a fun way of turning the Ascension deck building system into you can either do 1 versus 1, or you can do teams, or you can play it cooperatively. So all three of those versions are, I think, really well implemented. We played it 1v1, Brigham and I did, and we played it competitive. I keep saying competitive. It's cooperative. We played it cooperatively, and we like the cooperative version quite a bit better, but they all play really, really good. And so it was a fun way of turning that into like sort of not a dungeon crawl, but, like a sort of your characters running around on a map, defeating enemies, capturing objectives, that kind of thing. And when you combine it with the deck building, that just worked really well for us. So we like that quite a bit. But that one had been sitting on my shelf for probably about 6 to 9 months was how long it had been just sitting there.
So one that I had for a long time. I mean, a long time, years. Was one that I really wanted to get out to the table, taught it to my wife. She really liked the initial play of it. And then we went to campaign level 2, and she's like, I don't like this game.
Oh, no.
And so that's Legends of Andor. I've talked about this on the podcast before, and this is one that I'm 100% positive you and Andy are both going to very much enjoy.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. That's like a tale of two players, right? Because she was like, I'm out, and you're like, I'm in.
Yeah.
So, okay, we need to play it then.
But yeah, the story, and this is, it's not a simple run in the park. This is one that you're going to play a scenario, and chances are you're going to lose. And then you're going to have to go replay again 2 or 3 times until you get the bugs worked out and you have a strategy that you're going to get through. I mean, yeah, there's a chance that your first strategy could go fine, but more likely than not, you're going to run into issues and have to do the same scenario over and over again. But still, the story that is done with the cards, it's, you flip over cards to tell the campaign story. Very well done. The theme of it, the feel of it, the anxiety of your castle getting overrun because monsters are continually moving towards the castle. So you have to stop them. You have other quests that you're trying to do. You have side tasks that you're trying to complete. Legends of Andor was great. And there's a whole other box that I have. And then there's a whole other new box beyond that.
I was going to say, I think there's quite a bit out for this, isn't there?
Yeah, there's quite a bit out there. Yeah. And I have it, and there was just brand new content that came out for an offshoot of it that I'm very much looking forward to getting this to the table because I think you guys will love this.
Can't wait to eat it up. Sounds like we're going to love it.
Yes, for sure. But that's Legends of Andor. So glad I got the chance to play it. So upset that we haven't played it since.
Yeah. So some of these games that we're getting off the shelf, it's like, why have we not been playing this? Right. Like, I can't help but think of like Andy's experience with Maracaibo. Not that that's one that we owned, but it's been out for a really long time. And then when we all got to play it, we were like, where has this game been all our lives? We loved it so much. Yeah. And some of these Shelf of Shame games are kind of like that. It's like this, like all of this fun has just been sitting on the shelf and shrink for months, years. Yeah, like,
it's been sitting
why?
Here. I've been putting my drink on it.
So it's good to get these played. I didn't have any others that I got off my shelf, but what are some others that you wanted to talk about? So
another one that I was really trying to push, there was a couple I was trying to push to get played while we were doing this because I had the urgency to get this done. Astro Knights was one that I didn't quite get the chance to play. I got the rules all read. Plays very similar to Eon's End, except for it's just kind of a lighter version of Eon's End. Still looking forward to playing that because I have several expansions that go with that. But one that I did get that was kind of a basic game, but I really enjoyed was Ganymede. And Ganymede is you're shipping settlers off to from Earth to Mars, and from Mars they're going to take a shuttle to Ganymede, and from Ganymede they're going to go wherever. It doesn't matter. My responsibility is to get them to Ganymede, and they can do their own thing. And just the whole balance of trying to manipulate where you're going to draw cards, where you're going to draw tiles to get these workers or these settlers from Earth to Mars. And then when you're sending them from Mars to Ganymede, you have 2 shuttles that you can put them on. One shuttle requires 1 of each of the 4 colors, and the other shuttle requires 3 of a specific color. And so you have to manage what resources you're getting, or what, not resources, the resources are meeples. And so what meeples or settlers you're getting and how you're shifting those and getting them to those Ganymede shuttles. This was pretty simple. It kind of reminds, kind of simple. A middle game there. You have the Finding John Carter, which has very basic mechanics, very basic art. This is just
it's definitely like that. Yeah, maybe a little bit better, but yeah.
Maybe.
Yep. This definitely was a filler game for me. I mean, I don't know how you saw it, but yeah, maybe a slightly longer. I mean, we played it there were 4 of us.
Yeah.
And one of those players was Dave, but I think we were even at 4 players with Dave at the table. I think we were still done with this in under an hour.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, for me, it was filler. And I think for me, it was a little bit more forgettable. Not because it was bad, but just because, it's just, you're just moving meeples on your sheet, and you're drafting cards to try to get them to where they need to go to fulfill cards.
Yeah.
You know, the mechanics on this one are super simple.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we got it played. And if we ever, you know, had another, you know, if it was like, oh, we got 45 minutes and we just need a little filler, something like that, I'd definitely play it again.
Yeah, and there's an expansion that I got to open up, Ganymede Moon, that is going to add some more content. And to give that a try, hopefully that will provide some new feels to it, and see how that goes. So, but anyways,
very good.
We'll give that a shot, see how that turns out. Forbidden Island is a game
I can't believe you haven't played this yet.
I haven't played this. Yeah, I've had this game forever.
Holy smokes.
And never played it.
I had no idea this was a Shelf of Shame game for you.
Yeah. Well, we and that's kind of funny is sometimes, okay, I'm not going to say sometimes. Every time there's a game on BGA that I haven't played, that's on my Shelf of Shame, it becomes a very urgent game to play.
Because it's like, well, yeah, we'll learn it and then we can play it online.
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And so this is one that we've played, and I suck at this game. It's very simple.
It's surprisingly difficult to do, though. Yeah, especially with just the two of us, because we've just been playing it. You need more player powers. And you really have to lean into those player powers, I think, to be successful, because we lost that first game that we played. We're getting close to our second game. I think we've got 3 of the 4 relics, and then we got to make it to the pilot pad. But I don't know if we're going to make it. The island is getting real small.
Yes, yeah, really, really small. And another one that was right along those lines, again, BGA implementation, feeds the urgency to play the game, is that's Tiny Epic Defenders.
Yeah.
And Tiny Epic Defenders is another one that feels like, oh, this game was a snap, went through that, and then you play it again, and we just got trounced.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We get
crushed. Yeah, we'll have a good victory, and then we'll get crushed like 2 or 3 times. Then we get a good victory, and then we get crushed.
Yeah.
This is one that after playing it on BGA, because BGA was my first time playing this. So after playing it on BGA, I actually did go buy a copy of it.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I bought a physical version of it because I actually like it. I think it's fun. Just for a little small box filler cooperative game, I think it works really good.
Yeah, I'm hoping they get some more of those Tiny Epic ones. I'd love to get Tiny Epic Galaxies on BGA, because I really enjoy Tiny Epic Galaxies. That's probably one of my favorites. BGA has just been phenomenal about getting some really good implementations.
Yeah, it's a great service. It really is.
I think I've kind of reached my limit. I think 86 games at one time.
I can't believe you're doing that's absolutely insane.
Much.
That's insane. I can't believe you're doing that. I have close to 30, I think, going, and that is like my brain's already melting just trying to manage all that. So I don't know how you're doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's like 45 to 50 of those are with my wife.
I'm sure. Yeah. I still think that would just fry my brain, though.
Yeah.
I can't keep all that straight. It is nice, though, having that asynchronous play. You just kind of go and take your turns. I don't find it as satisfying to play some of these games because you're not like beginning to end really diving down into them. You kind of have to almost relearn where you're at in the game and what you're trying to do every time your turn rolls around when you've got that many going on and when you're only taking a turn every day or two. But that asynchronous play allows you to experience a whole lot of games that you wouldn't otherwise get played. So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword, but I like it.
Well, if there's simple games, that is great, right? I can play a ton of games. Like I conned or convinced our friend Jody to play Hive with me. Because I know I kind of burned you out on Hive.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, yes.
And Jody played the first game that Jody played. It was like, totally don't know what's going on. This is my first play, and just kind of working through all those issues of trying to understand how the different bugs work. And Jody's like, I totally am going to lose this, but I very much want to try it again. And it's gotten to the point where Jody is learning the pain of the pill bug.
Oh, yeah.
Because the pill bug is the one where Jody has my bee like almost completely surrounded.
And then you can use
and then I have my pill bug right there, so I can just pick up the bee and move it on the other side of the pill bug where only the pill bug is adjacent to it.
Yep.
And now Jody's got to move everything
back around.
Yep. And then on the other end, you get your beetle, and you get your beetle on top of their bee, so they can't move their bee. And so then it quickly becomes a game of, can I prevent their bugs from moving around my queen And then hopefully you'll use 2 turns to block actions, 1 turn to make an attack, 2 turns to block, make an attack, and then hopefully and get that out. And it's kind of fun. The Hive games, you start off really condensed pieces, and most of these games, I think every game that I've played really ends up to be this long, stretched out collection of tiles.
Yeah, it really starts to sprawl.
Yeah. But yeah, Jody's, we're in our 2nd game of playing Hive, and we'll see if Jody starts a 3rd game with me.
Nice. Yep. It is an interesting game. But you're right. I did get burned out on that one. I mean, after like 30 games of it, it was not like I just played a couple times.
No,
there were a significant number of plays
yes,
there, but
there was.
Yeah, it kind of ran its course for me.
Yeah, somebody has issues, and I'm not going to say it's.
Well, you're not going to say it, but I will.
Yeah, and I won't deny it.
All right. Well, I think that's going to about wrap it up, unless you had any others that you wanted to mention.
I think that's got everything on my list as I go over. There's a couple, but we'll save those for the next time.
All right. We'll save them for next time. So maybe next quarter, I don't know, maybe next month. We'll see. We're still kind of talking about it. And maybe it'll just be, we'll do updates after we've gotten a significant amount of these games played.
I think that's what it's got to be. There's got to be a drive for us to get it done. So we have to set a timeline for ourselves for sure.
Yeah.
But I think if we don't, the drive to get some of these games kicked out is just not going to be there. So
yeah. And I am way excited because I've got some great games, or at least some great looking games on my shelf of shame that I am so excited that we're finally going to get to and get played and get them to the table. So on that note, until next time,
we'll see you pulling the shrink off the games on your shelf of shame and hopefully getting it to the table.
Thank you for listening and being a part of Meeple Nation. If you would be so kind as to follow, subscribe, share, and rate or review this podcast, it really helps to spread the fun. You can be more involved in supporting the podcast by joining the nation at patreon.com/MeepleNation, or you can find a link at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. And while you're there, look at all our extra content. There are links to all our past episodes, a wide variety of blogs, pictures from our Instagram feed, and bios for all the hosts and our awesome bloggers. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Meeple Nation. If you would like to chat with the hosts or other members of the nation, you can join our Facebook group, Meeple Nation Off Air. We hope to see you again at a game night, a con, or maybe a suspense-driven evening of Werewolf. Thank you for listening and supporting Meeple Nation, and stay tuned for next week's episode.
Thank you so much for listening. We very much want to thank our patrons who help keep the podcast running. I personally want to thank my co-hosts for all the help they provide with both content here on the podcast, in addition to what we have available on our website. Without them, the podcast would not happen. If you too would like to support the podcast, you can join the nation at patreon.com/Meeple_nation. Or you can find a link to Patreon at the top of our webpage, meeplenation.com. If you have any questions, comments, or games you feel should be on our radar, you can always reach us at meeplenation@gmail.com. We can't wait to hear from you. I am grateful to Doug and Andy who helped me edit episodes, and I want to thank James and Kim Clark who do the editing on our blogs and on our webpage, which can be found at meeplenation.com. We want to thank Brain Detergent for our music. If you want to find more from him, you can follow his links that can be found on our webpage, or simply search for Brain Detergent on YouTube to find more of his tracks. Thank you again for listening and being part of the Meeple Nation community.